Non-fiction can be scarier than fiction. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about Monsters Among Us by Linda S. Godfrey. I was thinking and thinking about what to do for my Halloween week video, and I had so many different ideas, but then I just kept coming back to this one. And this is a book I read a few years ago. It's a non-fiction book all about monsters and spooky, strange goings on in the world. If you've ever watched those videos on YouTube where it's like 5 skinwalker encounters, and it's like people with really soothing voices reading true horror stories from Reddit, this is kind of the book equivalent to that. I love those kind of videos. I don't watch them much anymore, but I used to watch them all the time. I used to actually fall asleep listening to them because they're so soothing, but every now and again I would come across a story that was just so unsettling that it would disturb me too much to fall asleep to. But they were great. There was true crime ones, which were always the ones that disturbed me the most. I hate reading about like animal abuse or these scary encounters where someone is stalked or attempted a murder on someone. I don't really like those because they feel just a little bit too real. But all of the ones about weird creatures or demons or ghosts or things like that, aliens, these are all a little bit more fantastical and a little bit more hard to believe, especially as, the source being just some person on Reddit that could easily have been lying or making it up. But I do find them super compelling because you don't know if they've made them up. They might be being completely serious. And if they're not being completely serious, some of these stories are so good and so well written. They just are perfectly structured and kind of build the suspense and have good payoff. So even if they're not real and someone's just made them up, I still kind of enjoy them from a writing and artistry kind of standpoint. They're good stories. But the additional fact that they might be real just gives me that believable edge because I am gullible. Gives me that edge to really buy in and really feel enthralled and creeped out and spooked by them. And this book and Linda Godfrey's other books give me a similar effect. Linda Godfrey is a journalist. She has a number of books about this topic. This is one of them. I also have I Know What I Saw in audiobook form because I do really like to listen to these kind of stories. It took me a while to read this, to be honest, and get through. So I think future books of hers I'm going to consume in audio format. And I don't know much about her, but she seems super credible and professional. She was interviewed about this book on the Paranormal podcast with Jim Harold. Jim Harold has an amazing podcast. He has multiple amazing podcast series, including the Paranormal podcast, but also the Campfire, which is where people phone in and tell their stories. He's been doing it for 15 years or something like that. He does it weekly. Only about 8 or 10 are available at a time. They kind of time out, and he has the rest behind a paywall. He has an alien one, he has a cryptozoology one, which is more stories like this. But the Campfire kind of has lots of just random stories across all different topics. And I don't listen to that much anymore either, but I listen to so many. You start to see different themes and different patterns with people's true stories. Again, they could be lying, they could be making it up, of course, but there was an extra level of credibility to these calls on his podcast because the people were telling their own story. They were really not hiding behind a username. They were being quite honest and quite brave in sharing their stories and also sharing caveats of well, it could have been this and it could have been this, but this is what happened. And they seem very sane, normal people with normal jobs. They might have been skeptical before and they might explain that in their story. And so it buys some credibility to what they're saying. And I, for one, like to give people the benefit of the doubt and believe people. I like to be skeptical about the world. I don't think we as a species and science can explain everything. I think it makes sense that there's lots of things in the world that we can't explain. I think there's lots of things in physics and quantum physics that are difficult to understand and we've not quite pinned it all down. I think there's lots of animal species out there that haven't been discovered or are very rare. I mean, you hear of animals that have died out that then get discovered again, and it's like, oh, They hadn't died out. They are small in numbers, but there are still some around. So just because we don't see these animals doesn't mean they don't exist. There's also lots of parts of space, lots of parts of the ocean, lots of parts of the planet that are just not really explored. They're not really researched. So there's a lot there that we don't necessarily know about. So I'm a healthy skeptic, and I have an open mind to the spiritual and otherworldly, and think that there could be, paranormal explanations to some things that occur. So this book heavily gets into this. Linda Godfrey visits with people and interviews them, and they share their stories with her, and then she reports on them basically in this book like a journalist. She does look for the evidence and have a pragmatic approach. She has a skeptical, kind of scientific approach, but open minded as well. The real crux of this book is monsters, specifically Bigfoots and wolfmen. She looks at lots of different stories that seem to cover things like werewolves, also wolfmen, and like men with like human bodies and dog heads. A lot of the dogs share similar features, so they all look German Shepherd Alsatian like. There's a few that look like Anubis, and there's a few stories where a literal werewolf like transformation was seen, one of which was like in the middle of a church ceremony, so there was like lots and lots of witnesses. This is a picture drawn by one of the eyewitnesses who seen the transformation in the church. So do with that what you will. There's also lots of reports of Bigfoots in this book, kind of large primate style creatures that seem to stalk people and follow people in specific forests. They seem to have their own language that seems like vaguely Native American. They will throw things at people and chase people. This is an example of one that chased someone. This is the person that was chased drew this picture to kind of show what he looked like. It's kind of a funny drawing, but that's kind of what I would think a Bigfoot face would look like, don't you? And another big theme of this book is portals. So she reports on a lot of portals that were seen, and also portals that seem to be seen in association with these creatures. So one of the conclusions you kind of draw from this book is that these creatures, some of them, could be interdimensional beings that travel via portals, because a lot of the footprints and stuff that were discovered, there's pictures of the footprints and other like primary sources in this book. They seem to like disappear out of nowhere and appear out of nowhere, almost like they are using portals to kind of travel, which is interesting and could explain how these things get around without being seen very often. And the book is just full of these stories. It's like a pretty lengthy book, just full of different people's experiences, spanning quite a long time, and they're kind of divided into chapters and themes. So there's a chapter that's all about kind of the underground and creatures that were seen coming out of tunnels or coming out of like sewer grates and stuff like that. And then there's a chapter about like ones that peep through windows, and it'll be like 5 or 6 stories in which these creatures were seen by people in their own home looking through the window. I thoroughly recommend the book, even if you're super skeptical and think it's all ridiculous. I think the stories are interesting, even if you're not going to buy into them. I think it's important to kind of challenge yourself to think outside of the realms of possibility sometimes and kind of open your mind every now and again. I think often people can be really close minded, and that's sometimes coming from like fear, and like people don't want to believe that there's more out of there. And there's like various reasons why they're fearful of that and want to avoid it as much as possible, which is fair enough. But if you're someone that has like a childish sense of wonder about the world, and you used to go to the library and check out like books on mysteries and unsolved mysteries, and you like to dive down these rabbit holes online of real scary stories, then you will enjoy this book. And it might actually provide you with the tools to see common themes in some of these stories that you see online, and create some theories that could explain what's going on in some of these stories, if they're true, that is. I also think this book explores the topic in quite a respectful way compared to some other sources. I know, like, discussions of Native American lore and creatures such as skinwalkers and wendigos, which you're not really supposed to talk about. They are very taboo in Native American cultures. They're kind of being co opted as an entertaining story, which is technically quite offensive and problematic. I mean, I enjoy listening to these stories as well, but I think it's important to remember that this is someone's real culture and real beliefs, and like have respect for that as well, and have respect for people's boundaries. I also can't remember whether this book gets into Appalachia and all the lore around creatures living in the woods there and how they behave. I find all of those stories really fascinating, but I think there also is a toxic element to that. I know stories about Appalachia are very popular on TikTok and YouTube, and again, it has similar issues of like Appalachian culture is real and it's important to people, and these topics should probably be treated with some respect and not just be seen as like pure fiction or pure entertainment, because people, have strong beliefs and they've lived there for generations and generations, and that deserves to be talked about with respect. But I think this book and books like it come from a more of a research, kind of scientific approach, and keep it respectful and kind of recognize culture and cultural perspectives. And I think that's what we need when we kind of dive into these topics from kind of an academic standpoint or just from a personal interest standpoint. And we should be a bit cautious about using other people's culture as like pure entertainment. I think we can be entertained but also be respectful. And if anyone from these cultures that might be watching has any feedback on that or anything to say about that, please leave it in the comments, because I want to be respectful as well. So if I haven't been, then let me know. Let me know if you've read Monsters Among Us and what you thought of it, if you've read any of Linda Godfrey's other books and if you recommend any of them, or any books on similar topic by other authors that also treat the topic with like respect and dignity. And also, let me know if you've had any interesting paranormal experiences that couldn't be explained, especially with dogmen or Bigfoot or any of those kind of creatures. I'd be very interested to hear them. Thank you for watching. Have a good Halloween. Samhain. Stay safe and sensible. Don't go looking for dogmen. Don't be doing Ouija boards or exploring haunted places that are probably filled with asbestos. But do open your mind and stay curious. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!